The voicemail landed at 11:47 on a Saturday morning. Mallory. It's Barbara. We need you at the house by 2 p.m. It's a family emergency meeting. Don't be late. Her voice was sharp, clipped, and full of authority she thought she owned. I was at the cemetery visiting my father's grave when I heard it. He'd left me everything he built. $3.2 million in property and investments. Barbara knew about the inheritance. She'd asked about it 3 separate times since the funeral. Now she suddenly had an emergency that required my presence? My hands didn't shake. They went still. Ice cold still. Because I knew exactly what this was. My husband, Lennox, was 34. Barbara's only child and lifelong project. She raised him to believe he was exceptional simply for existing. He went to private schools, grew up in country clubs, and burned through a trust fund that ran dry by the time he turned 26. When we married 4 years ago, Barbara made her opinion painfully clear. I was beneath them because my dad was a carpenter and I grew up in a small house. I worked as a dental hygienist, and that alone made me not their kind in her eyes, but I was pretty enough, quiet enough, so she tolerated me. Lennox worked in sales but never kept a job longer than 18 months. Barbara blamed everyone but him, his bosses, the economy, jealous co-workers. Never the son she worshipped. But the day my dad died and left me everything? Barbara's tone shifted instantly. Suddenly I was valuable. Suddenly I was family. And today's urgent summons made it clear exactly why. For 4 years, I played the role perfectly. I hosted Barbara's bridge club at our apartment. I remembered her birthday with expensive gifts. I smiled when she criticized my cooking, my clothes, my lack of ambition. I volunteered to drive her to appointments when Lennox was too busy. I listened to her complain about her friends for hours on the phone. I never asked for help when Lennox lost another job and I covered our rent alone for 5 months. I absorbed everything because that's what good daughters-in-law do. But after my dad died, something shifted. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was clarity. I started noticing things I had normalized for years. I stood at his grave that Saturday morning, sobbing quietly as I laid fresh flowers on the grass. Barbara hadn't shown up for the funeral. She sent a card that said, "Deepest sympathies." No signature, no warmth, nothing. Lennox came, but he left after 20 minutes because he had a networking event. I stayed for 3 hours, sitting on the damp ground, talking to the headstone like he could still hear me. Dad had spent his whole life working 60-hour weeks. Saving every dollar. Driving the same old truck and living in a modest house so I could have the security he never had. He gave me everything without ever asking for anything back. Now Barbara wanted a family emergency meeting. I looked at my dad's name carved into the granite, touched the cold surface and whispered, "I won't let them take what you left me." Before I could leave the cemetery, my phone buzzed. A text from Lennox. "Mom says you got her message. Don't make excuses. This is important. Be there at 2. No, how are you? No, I know you're at the cemetery. Just a command." I scrolled up through our recent messages. 2 weeks ago, I had asked him to pick up groceries because I was working a double shift. He said he was too tired. Last month, I asked if we could talk about his job search. He said I was nagging. But today, when his mother demanded my presence, he expected immediate compliance. I replied with one word, "Okay." Then I opened my banking app and checked my accounts. Everything was still there. At least for now. Barbara lived in a 4-bedroom house in a gated community. She bought it 20 years ago when her husband was alive and successful. Now it was falling apart. The roof leaked. The deck was rotting. The homeowners association had sent 3 violation notices about the overgrown yard. Barbara refused to downsize. She told everyone her house was her legacy, a proof of her status. The mortgage was paid off, but the property taxes were $18,000 a year. Maintenance costs were crushing her. I knew this because Lennox had asked me twice in the past 3 months to lend her money. I said no both times. I told him Dad's estate was still in probate and I couldn't access anything yet. That was 6 weeks ago. Probate cleared last week, and Barbara had just found out. I arrived at 1:55 p.m. Lennox's car was already in the driveway. So was Barbara's sister Helen's car. And her financial advisor's Mercedes. This wasn't a family emergency. This was an intervention. I sat in my car for 3 minutes, staring at the front door. I could leave. I could drive away and text them that something came up. But I had spent 4 years running from conflict, swallowing disrespect, pretending everything was fine. Today felt different. Today I walked toward the door with my phone recording in my pocket. If this was an ambush, I wanted evidence. I rang the doorbell. Barbara answered immediately, like she had been waiting behind it. Her smile was tight. "There you are. Come in. We have a lot to discuss." They were all sitting in the living room like a board meeting. Barbara was in her chair by the window. Helen on the couch. The financial advisor, a man named Preston, at the dining table with folders spread out. Lennox stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable but determined. I was the last to arrive at my own ambush. "Sit down, Mallory," Barbara said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I sat. Preston cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming on short notice. We wanted to discuss your recent inheritance and how it impacts the family." I kept my face neutral. "My inheritance? From my father?" Barbara leaned forward. "Yes, dear. Lennox told us everything. $3.2 million. That's a substantial amount. And we think it's time to talk about responsibilities." Preston opened one of his folders. "Mrs. McCarty, your mother-in-law is facing some financial challenges. Property taxes, home repairs, rising cost of living. As a family, we believe it's important to support each other during difficult times." I blinked. "You want me to give Barbara money?" Helen jumped in quickly. "Not give. Invest. Barbara's house is a valuable asset. With some strategic improvements and proper financial planning, it could become a real source of stability for everyone." Barbara's voice was now sweet and coordinated. "Mallory, you've always been such a generous girl. I know your father would want you to help your family. Lennox is my son. That makes you my daughter. Family takes care of family." I looked at Lennox. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked him directly, "Did you know about this meeting?" He shifted his weight. "Mom asked me to be here for support." Preston slid a document across the table toward me. "We've prepared a proposal. A family investment plan. You would contribute $2,800,000. $350,000 would go toward the renovation and maintenance of this property. In exchange, you'd receive a percentage of equity and profit sharing if the house is ever sold." I didn't touch the paper. "What percentage?" Preston hesitated. I did the math in my head. "I would give $2.8 million of my $3.2 million inheritance for equity in a house that was currently worth maybe $650,000 and falling apart." "That's not an investment," I said quietly. "That's a donation with extra steps." Barbara's smile faded. "Mallory, I'm surprised at you. This is your husband's family home. Don't you want to preserve that legacy?" I looked around the room. Whose idea was this? Who called this meeting? No one answered. The silence told me everything. Barbara dropped the sweet tone. "Fine. Let's be honest. I need at least $2 million. The house needs work and I've got some other pressing financial needs. I'm barely keeping up. You have $3.2 million sitting in an account doing nothing. You don't need all that money. You're young. You have time to rebuild. I'm 68 years old. This is my last chance to secure my future." Helen added, "And it's not just about Barbara. This helps Lennox too. Eventually, he'll inherit this house. You'd be investing in your own future." I turned to Lennox. "Did you agree to this?" He finally looked at me. "Mom needs help. You have the money. I don't see why this is such a big deal." Something inside me went quiet and cold. "Because it's my money. My father's money. Not yours." Barbara's face hardened. "Your father's money. Your father, the carpenter. Meanwhile, we paid for your wedding. We included you in our family. We treated you like you belonged. You paid for the wedding?" I repeated slowly. Barbara nodded. "Of course we did. $35,000. I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking records. I scrolled back 4 years to our wedding. I turned the screen toward her. I paid for the wedding. I have the receipts. You contributed $2,000 as a gift, which you asked us to use for the honeymoon. We spent it on rent because Lennox was unemployed. Barbara's face flushed. That's not how I remember it. I kept going. You didn't include me in your family. You tolerated me. You criticized me. You forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. The only reason I'm here today is because I have money now. Money you want. Helen stood up. This is ridiculous. Barbara has been nothing but kind to you. I laughed. It surprised even me. Kind? She told Lennox I wasn't smart enough for him. She said that to his face at Christmas dinner last year. Before I left the cemetery that morning, I had done something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator. Not because I suspected anything specific, but because Barbara's urgency felt wrong. The investigator's name was Miss Ortega. She was fast and thorough. By 1 p.m., she had sent me a preliminary report. I pulled it up on my phone now. Barbara, how much do you currently owe in credit card debt? Her eyes narrowed. That's none of your business. I read from the report. $1,400,000 across 6 cards. You took out a home equity line of credit last year for $120,000. You've spent it all. You have $3,400 in your checking account. You're 3 months behind on property taxes. The room went silent. Preston's face went pale. He hadn't known. Helen looked at Barbara shocked. Lennox said, Mom, is that true? Barbara's voice shook with rage. How dare you invade my privacy? I kept reading. You've asked Lennox for money 14 times in the past year. He's given you $98,200 total. Money we couldn't afford because I was covering our rent alone. I looked at Lennox. Did you think I didn't notice? Did you think I wouldn't check our accounts? He opened his mouth but nothing came out. I turned back to Barbara. This meeting isn't about family legacy. It's about desperation. You're drowning in debt and you saw my inheritance as a life raft. Preston started gathering his folders. I think I should go. Barbara grabbed his arm. No. Stay. We can still work this out. I stood up. There's nothing to work out. I'm not giving you $2 million. I'm not giving you anything. Barbara's voice rose. Then you're not family. Lennox finally found his voice. Mallory, stop. This is my mother. She raised me. She needs help. We have to do something. I looked at him. Really looked at him. We. You keep saying we. But you never asked me. You ambushed me. You coordinated with her behind my back. You chose her side before I even walked in the door. He stepped closer. She's my mother. I nodded. And I'm your wife. Or I was. The room froze. Barbara stood up. What does that mean? I pulled a folder from my bag. Inside were papers I had prepared that morning after receiving her voicemail. These are divorce papers. I'm filing on Monday. Lennox looked like I had slapped him. You can't be serious. I was completely calm. I've never been more serious. You can stay here with your mother. I'm done. Helen gasped. Barbara's voice turned venomous. You selfish little witch. After everything we've done for you. Before anyone could say more, I pulled out a second document. Barbara, I'm going to make you a different offer. She looked suspicious. What offer? I placed the paper on the table. I'll give you $750,000, her eyes widened. In exchange for what? I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. In exchange for this house. The room erupted. Lennox shouted, You can't take her house. I held up my hand. I'm not taking it. I'm buying it. Fair market value. $650,000 and I'm offering $750,000. You can buy a nice condo somewhere. Start fresh. Barbara's face was purple. This house is my home. My legacy. I'll never sell it to you. I shrugged. Then you'll lose it to the bank in 6 months. Your choice. Their lawyer, who had been silent, spoke up carefully. Mrs. McCarty, that's actually not a bad offer. Given the condition of the property and your current debt load, Barbara cut him off. I don't care. I'm not selling my house to her. I pulled out my phone again. My private investigator had found something else interesting. Barbara has been telling people she's been paying for our living expenses. You've been accepting sympathy and financial help from her church community. A total of $120,000 over the past 2 years. Helen's mouth fell open. Barbara, you told me you were supporting Lennox. I nodded. She's been lying to everyone. Taking money from people who thought she was struggling to help her son. Meanwhile, Lennox and I were struggling because he kept giving her money without telling me. Lennox looked sick. Mom, is this true? Barbara's voice was ice. I don't have to explain myself to any of you. Helen stood up and walked to the door. I'm leaving. Barbara, I love you, but this is wrong. Mallory is offering you a lifeline and you're too proud to take it. Barbara's voice cracked. Helen, please. Helen shook her head. I gave you $35,000 last year because you said you needed it for medical bills. You spent it on furniture and a vacation. I'm done. She left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Now it was just me, Barbara, Lennox, and their financial advisor who was now looking uncomfortable. Perhaps everyone should take some time to cool down and reconsider. I cut him off. The offer expires in 48 hours. After that, I'm buying a different property and Barbara can figure things out herself. I walked toward the door. Lennox grabbed my arm. Mallory, please. Don't do this. I pulled my arm free. You did this. Both of you. Not me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive. My hands were shaking now. I had just blown up my marriage. I had just offered to buy my mother-in-law's house out from under her. I had just walked away from the only family I had left since Dad died. But I wasn't sad. I was furious. Furious at the years of disrespect. Furious at being used. Furious at Lennox for never protecting me. Furious at myself for accepting it for so long. My phone rang. It was Miss Ortega. I saw you left the house. How did it go? I laughed. It sounded slightly unhinged. I offered to buy her house. She refused. Now we wait. Miss Ortega was quiet for a moment. You know she'll come back. People like her always do when the money runs out. For 3 days, my phone was silent. No calls from Lennox. No texts from Barbara. Nothing. I spent those days moving my inheritance into a trust account that only I could access. I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce. I started looking at apartments. I packed Lennox's clothes into boxes. On the 3rd day, I received an email from Preston. The subject line read, Revised Proposal. I opened it. Barbara was willing to sell the house. But she wanted $850,000, not $750,000. She wanted an additional $100,000 for emotional distress. I replied with one sentence. The offer was $750,000. It's now $700,000. Every day she waits, I drop it by $10,000. I hit send and went to the gym. When I came back 2 hours later, there was a voicemail from Barbara. Her voice was small, defeated. Fine. I accept your previous offer of $750,000. When can we close? The house closing happened 18 days later. Barbara looked 10 years older as she sat at the conference table. She signed every document without reading a single line, her hands trembling the entire time. Lennox wasn't there. He'd moved in with a friend and was refusing to speak to either of us. The title company finalized everything, and I wired her the $750,000. She stared at the confirmation screen like she was looking at her own obituary. I hope you're happy, she muttered. I didn't answer. The house was mine now. That afternoon, I walked through it with a contractor. We inspected every room, every crack, every leak. His estimate came back at $55,000 to restore it properly. I approved the work on the spot. Over the next 6 weeks, the house transformed. New roof. New deck. Professional landscaping. Fresh paint. Updated kitchen. The homeowners association violations were cleared. The property value jumped to $890,000. I listed it for sale. It sold in 8 days for $915,000. After renovation costs and fees, I profited $100,000. But money wasn't the point. The point was this: Barbara could have fixed her own house years ago if she had been responsible. Instead, She let it rot while demanding sympathy and handouts. She could have downsized with dignity. Instead, she gambled that I would be too weak to say no. She lost that gamble. The house that was her legacy became my proof that she had been wrong about me from the beginning. I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was patient. The divorce was finalized 3 months after the house closing. Lennox tried to claim he was entitled to half my inheritance since we were married when I received it. My lawyer crushed that argument in 10 minutes. Inheritance is not community property unless it's commingled. I had kept everything separate. He got nothing. At the final hearing, Lennox looked at me with something like regret. I never thought you'd actually leave. I thought about that for a moment. I never thought you'd choose her over me. But you did. Every single time. He didn't argue. He signed the papers. We walked out of the courthouse as strangers. I felt lighter than I had in 4 years. That night, I drove to my dad's grave. I sat on the grass like I had that Saturday morning when this all started. I did it, Dad. I protected what you gave me. I'm sorry it cost my marriage, but I'm not sorry I stood up for myself. The wind moved through the trees. It felt like an answer. 6 months later, I bought a small house. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a garden I could manage. I paid cash. No mortgage. No debt. Just mine. I still worked as a dental hygienist. I liked my job. I liked my coworkers. I didn't need to work anymore, but I wanted to. I wanted routine and purpose and normal things. Barbara moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town. She told people I had stolen her house. Most people didn't believe her. Helen made sure the truth spread quietly through their social circle. Lennox got a job that lasted 6 months before he was fired again. I heard he moved back in with Barbara. The apartment was too small for both of them. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. Free from expectations I could never meet. Free from people who only valued me for what I could provide. Free from the belief that family meant accepting cruelty. People ask me if I regret how everything happened. If I wish I had tried harder to make peace. The answer is no. Peace with people who see you as a resource is not peace. It's surrender. My father left me $3.2 million. But the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was his example. He worked hard. He saved carefully. He built something that would outlast him. He didn't waste his life trying to impress people who didn't respect him. He didn't bend himself into shapes that weren't his own. He lived small and died with dignity. That's the legacy I'm carrying forward. Not the money, though I'm grateful for it. But the knowledge that my worth isn't determined by how much I give away. Lennox wanted a wife who would fund his mother's delusions. He got divorce papers. I wanted peace. I got it. And it only cost me people who were never really mine to begin with. I would like to know where anyone watching is listening from. It gives me joy knowing how far my story has traveled. If you've ever been treated like a wallet by the people who should love you most, I want you to know that you're not alone. Your worth isn't measured by what you give away. And if this story has given you the courage to set boundaries, hit that subscribe button. Please, don't forget to check our channel for other of our amazing stories.